On today's show, the guys talk about value in education. What is your district doing to provide value to students? Do students have a voice in that? What about teachers? Are they finding value in your district? We have this and an East Initiative update next on the EduTechGuys. EduTechGuys Radio. Radio.edutechguys.com.
The opinions expressed under the site and its programs are those of the participants and not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any specific educational entity, sponsor, company, state, or government agency.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Shifting from third to first without putting the clutch in?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do that all the time. Yeah. No, today I had a faculty member come by and they were talking about comparing data and finding the holy grail of what's wrong with this school district or that school district or this grade level or that grade level. Yeah. And I told them it was one word. And so then they start,
You're like Cookie.
Yeah.
City Slickers.
That's right.
The one thing.
And they start throwing out words like, love and innovation and, what is it? And that made me think of all the Twitter crap that everybody spews out. Do work as hard as you can and your workers will work hard with you.
Yes.
If you cut off a finger, they'll cut off a finger. Well, what the hell is that about? But, there's the truth. And I guess it's the one thing that people talk about value all the time, but value is the key. And they like to come up with other words for it. Maybe value is too much of a generic word. I guess you can't use the word value in education because it's too generic. Because, come on, the grocery store uses value. So, Walmart uses value. And then George Clooney's aunt sings about it because extra value is what you get when you buy Coronet. So Rosemary sings about it. So,
okay, so the issue then is, I would agree. I would say value is the word. Except the problem is value is very subjective.
But,
the value of Coronet to you, just using your song example, the value of Coronet to you is different than the value of Coronet to me, or anything. The value of working where I work is different than the value that someone else gets working where I work or where you work. Or
right.
So maybe that's why people don't use it. But here's the funny thing about it. At least, okay, just my thinking off the top of my head here. I think it's actually the most perfect, beautiful word. I really do. Because
it's a basic word.
Because if you have students, and we're talking students, or heck, for that matter, faculty, or the freaking, I don't care, custodial staff, it doesn't matter, anybody working at a school district. If they don't, A, see the value in being there, working there, what have you, then they're not going to have an interest in staying there or give a crap what's going on. Or B, if it's not them seeing the value, but instead if they're not feeling valued, then the same thing. If I don't get value of working where I work, then why am I working here?
Right.
By the same token, if I am working and I get value out of working, and maybe my value is my paycheck, okay, not high on the priority list necessarily, or maybe it is high on the priority list.
You know who you are.
Right, and depending on what motivates you.
What your values are.
So maybe you're like, okay, so I value my paycheck, and maybe I value my coworkers. But if where I work doesn't value me, then at some point I wake up and go, they don't give a crap like the meme going around, if I died, they replace me in a week without thinking twice about it.
Sure.
Are they going to put up a plaque on the wall? Or are they going to say, oh my gosh, David was... No.
But let's get to the basics of value. And there's
or they might. I don't know. I guess it depends.
But if that's your sole reason for coming to work, then yes, that's what you base it on. The value, someone would say, well, there's multiple values. I can get that.
Sure.
But let's take a look at what normally happens. A teenage boy joins the drama club to act in Shakespeare's Othello because the cute girl's in there.
Okay.
That's where he finds value.
Okay, sure.
That's his value. Now, down the road, he might come to love Shakespeare and love acting, and his values change because they can. But, it's just like working at a job. But there's the key that I think is where we are in education, is that things move so fast. The value for me in 1972 77, being in the second grade, was things that I got at school I couldn't get at home.
Yeah.
Not that my parents couldn't provide them. It's just that I had the camaraderie of students. They had this big ass slide on the playground.
It seemed that way at the time.
At the time, it did.
Now you're like, it's 3 steps.
It had a jungle gym that was the shape of the Moonlander. There was value there to me. Did my values change? Well, sure they did. You begin to like your teacher. You begin to enjoy reading Danny and the Dinosaur for the 7,000th time in circle reading, or whatever it is. Your values change, but I could consistently find value. And when I got to high school, did I find value in trig? No, I didn't. Did I find value in American government? No, I didn't. I did it because I was there for band, and I was there for music, and I was there for chemistry, or my values changed. And what I'm getting at is I don't believe in the current society. I was not bombarded with other things that students are bombarded with in the last 20 years.
Sure.
Let's just say that. Because it's changed. You and I know we didn't have video games. The first video game I ever saw was Sears Pong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was expensive, and all I did was play Pong.
Right.
You either played against somebody or against the wall. That's all you played.
That's exactly right.
And you played Breakout, and that was it. Yeah. So we're not overwhelmed with, right now any child can pull up any device, and they've got 70,000 to 100,000 or more games at their fingertips for free.
Well, and not just games. Look at all the other content they can consume.
SpongeBob 24/7.
Well, even if we get away from the entertainment part of that and strictly talk education or edutainment, because a lot of it, the line is so blurry. If I want to learn something, heck, I even do this as an adult. If I want to learn something, where's probably the first place I'm looking?
Google.
I'm going to Google, and where's that going to take me? YouTube. Right? In fact, I probably won't even go to Google. I'm just going to go to YouTube first and look to see, how do I change out the carburetor of a 2005 Pontiac Grand Prix? Could I take it to the mechanic down the road? Well, I could, but if I Google that, look it up on YouTube, and guess what? Here's a video on how to do that. Okay, and maybe that's not the whole thing. Maybe I have to go find some other forums or whatever. But guess what I just learned to do? I learned how to change out that part in the car, and I just saved all that money doing that. But the value was multiple.
Right.
One, I learned something. I learned how to do something. Two, I saved a buttload of money, potentially. Now, could I have screwed it up and cost me a whole lot more? Yeah, could have. But
But the funny part is, if you'd have screwed it up, you'd have gone back and Googled again to figure out how to fix your screw up.
Well, probably so.
And see, there's what's really interesting, and that's the discussion we got in. And post-secondary school at this point, we had this discussion not long ago. What makes you a doctor? Well, you just learn other stuff that I don't know. Yeah, are you better at learning at it? Sure, but that's anywhere. There's going to be somebody that's better at learning, fixing an engine than I am, but I'm better at learning this than them. Everybody can't be a doctor.
Right.
But, that's what's interesting about where we are, and I believe that's where public schools are lying, is that you've got to figure out for your kids in your community and your moment in time what provides value to them. Where do they seek value? And that brings us back to the engagement index that we just talked about on one of the previous shows. They're engaging that. Did you find this informative? Did you find value in this? Did this engage you, or did you just sit through it and smile and that's the end of it? But I truly believe that that's where we're sitting as a country, as a race of humans.
Right.
We are sitting at a point of what provides value, because it's all different now. I think that's really interesting, and I guess what I'm getting tired of is I'm getting tired of everybody on Twitter shooting around everything else, coming up with other things when they all really come back to value. When you say, getting to hugging and caring about your kids. Well, here's the thing. That's true. In your classroom, there's a percentage of kids that find value in you caring about them and hugging and
right.
But there's a whole percentage of, could be a large, could be a small, kids that don't want you touching them,
right.
and they don't care what you think about them.
Right. And see, and I think that's part of where I think it's part of where people fall down and fall short is in that in the quest for value, everybody's looking for the so-called silver bullet that's going to show me the value. Show me the value.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Here's the thing. I don't think, and you can disagree if you don't agree with what I'm about to say here, but I don't think, and I don't think you think, there is one silver bullet with the word value stamped into the casing that we can just start firing, at education. No. I just because as we started this whole conversation, it goes back to value first of all is very personal, and the way I interpret the value of something is going to be different than the way you interpret the value of something. And I think you had a great example. There's a whole lot of folks that are like, you got to reach out and touch the kids, and you got to hug them, and you got to do this, you got to do that. And that works for however many students.
Right.
I was one of those students where if all of a sudden the teacher was coming up and starting hugging them, I can tell you right now, I'd be like, yo, blow the whistle. I got a, stranger danger. I'd be like, yo, what's up with you? That is not the way I connected.
Right.
And frankly, in school, that was not the value I sought. Now, I don't know, was it the way I was brought up? I don't know if it was just something in my makeup, whatever it was. But for me, the value of school was the means to whatever other ends I had going on. I'll be honest, a lot of times the value I got out of school was the fact that there was this 8-hour period or however long we were in school where I had to get through that in order to get out of that in order to go play. I mean, really, to go hang out with my friends, to go do this, to go do that. I didn't have to. I mean, that was how I saw my education on many days.
Yeah.
That was the value I got. Did I learn, I don't know, whatever, sonnets and spelling and whatever? Yeah, I'm sure I learned some of that along the way, but I didn't care. Now, by the same token, I had certain teachers that, I loved being in their class every single day because whatever it was, and do I remember what that stuff was? No, I really don't. I couldn't tell you right now what the value I got out of it, but obviously I got some value.
Could have been entertainment.
It could have been entertainment. It could have just been, that I clicked with that particular person, whatever it was. But I remember that particular educator, and probably will never forget those particular educators because whatever the value was that I got at the time, it clicked.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think schools are looking too hard for, like you said at the very beginning, that one thing. If I can find the one thing that'll cure this district. No. Right. First of all, it's not going to be one thing. Well, yes, it is. The value.
Well, I'm dealing with an educator right now from a school district in another state. And their answer to something they want to provide is the school district says, or their boss says, that we can't get it into the schedule. Now, here's what's interesting, what we've done in education when we talk about value. Educators have told the students and told the community what value education is the biggest value. Your value. We've tied those two words together, the word education and value, as if it's one big giant, conglomerate of pill that I take. And every morning I took my education this morning, so I'm all up on that and A+.
Right.
I got my C vitamin, my education. But there's what's interesting is that we continually do that. We continually schedule courses that we think will do them better without asking them what they need.
Yeah.
That means I might as well go to a doctor who goes, listen, I have no clue what's wrong with you. Don't want to hear you talk about it. I'm just going to put you on chemo and shoot you through these shots, and we're going to run these tests on you and give you all these drugs. Okay? And it's going to cover the whole gamut. Because that way, you're getting the best value for your medical, services here at
exactly.
Hospital 105.
Right.
I think that's the key that we're not looking at is you just got to ask them what they want. We're talking about a group of kids now who realize that school's going to cost them, post-secondary school is going to cost them more money than they can ever make in a lifetime. Why would you go to a school that's going to cost you $250,000 or more to take a job that's going to pay you $40,000 a year. And they hear that, and they can't, and a lot of them can't see value in it, especially when they already live in an area where they don't see that kind of money anyway.
Right.
When they can't even comprehend that, I'm just struggling to make $1.25 to come to school and eat the lunch.
Right.
Just to do these things.
Yeah.
So how in the world would I even get this money to go to school, and then on top of that, get out of school and immediately start in debt?
Right.
They're not stupid. They have the world in their palms, and they're reading this information. And to me, we've just got to help them figure out what is of value to them, and so they can tell us what's of value to them. Because if we're in a country now where we're going to listen to the young people tell us about the Bill of Rights and what's good for the country and what's good for people, and we value their opinion to the point where they're marching on our main cities, and they're marching and they're telling our government, then how in the world, how dare us not let them do the same for their own education?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that a school has a tragedy, and 5 kids get together at a home and start a nationwide movement, worldwide movement.
Right.
5 kids. There were more than 5 kids at that school.
Right. Right.
So those 5 kids, what did it not encompass more? How did they were getting value from their school that made them who they are? What they were getting from school was to prepare them for what they were going to do. And so we have to look at these numbers. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just saying we need to look at it and say, okay, why does this percentage do well? And It's not always the wealthy, and it's not always a color.
Right.
We need to say, why do these kids get it? What in their lives get it? Well, it's a child from a single parent family raising smaller children because their parents working, and they know that if they do these things, in today's news, the YouTube shooting.
Right.
That person found value in what they were doing.
Yeah.
And definitely to the point where it was making them a living.
Right.
Until YouTube changed the game plan on them. And then it pushed him to the point of violence.
Right. Well, and I would say that, and I don't know if this is parallel to that or if this is, I don't know how they're interconnected. Okay, I'm not a psychology person.
Right,
but,
me either.
But, I would say that the changes that affected that person's life put them in an emotional place where they were in such despair over whatever their loss was, whatever happened to their livelihood, that then they stepped out and took that action of shooting folks and then ultimately taking her own life. It's, to me, some of this to me is akin to what people most likely saw. I mean, I wouldn't know, I wasn't around. Back in the Great Depression, when everything they had worked for and everything they had built up, now suddenly the carpet is pulled out from under them under they had no control of it at all. I'm going along, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and all of a sudden the rules change, and now I'm not making what I was making. And it's not like I'm not making, I'm not making what I'm making, and it's only off by, and I'm going to say only in air quotes here, but it's only off by 10%. No, this is not a 10% reduction.
No.
For a lot of folks, and I know we're kind of bird walking on this, but it all ties back to the value. But for a lot of folks, and I will tell you straight up, I'm one of those folks that the changes at YouTube has affected the income I used to get from YouTube by 90%. So now you're talking about someone, and I know a lot of times people are like, oh, well, they were making $1 million, and now they're making 100,000 or whatever. No. And yes, some of those, yes, but it's folks who were making a living. That is, they were probably making 30 or 40,000 off of YouTube, and now they're making 3. Right. Or 5.
Right.
Think about that. If you're in a job and you're making $65,000 a year doing what you do, and all of a sudden things change that are out of your control, and they say you can still provide for us, you can still work for us, but your pay is going to be $6,500 a year instead of $65,000.
Right.
Well, no, you can't live on that.
Even at that, take $500 from someone a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a car payment. That's medical bills. That's a lot
house
of groceries.
Payment, depending on where
that's
you
a lot
live.
of groceries.
Yes.
That's and people don't realize that this is a major influence that what we're dealing with. But, so we'll wrap this up because we don't want to go too long. But it's all about value, and I know we harp on that a lot and we talk about that. But let's tie it into student voice now. I want to give cheers to all the schools that are embracing student voice and that are fixing that. But when I see a picture or I see a post and you've got a small group, you've got 30 or 40 kids representing an entire student body, that's not truly engagement. That's not truly student voice. As we know, because of the mental health issues and the way students are and the way children grow up, that they don't even confide in their own friends.
Right.
And that's evident in the things that have happened in recent history.
Sure.
So there's the kicker. And a lot like the Wellington Index, the engagement index. Does it fix everything? No, it doesn't. They know it doesn't. They'll continually, and they are continually striving to make it better and more in depth. But it does give every student a voice. It gives every student the ability to be a dot on that XY axis.
Right.
To help them better figure out, okay, these are clumping here. Because there's the thing. The kids that volunteer are the kids that teachers nominate to be on a committee for student voice or a committee for change. Those are the ones that are floating to the top already. Those are the kids that are the outstanding kids. Very rarely does a teacher go, well, I'm going to pick Jeff because he's in trouble. He's absent 3 days a week, and this might be the perfect voice we need. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Not. And if there's a teacher out there that's going, well, I would do that. Well, I'm sure you would. But overall, that's not what's happening.
Right.
That's not the kids that are making the choice. And there has to be a fine line somewhere in there. There has to be a fix. Or if you're going to talk about student voice, you're going to talk about hearing every child. We're talking about voting all the time in this country. We're talking about marching, that every person that comes out and protests is one more voice to be heard. But it's really funny. We don't actually do that in practice. When it comes down to practice, that's the last thing we do. Well, we don't have time. We don't have this. We don't have that. The least common denominator is usually the thing that fails the first.
Sure.
It's that 15-cent part on your car.
Right.
I can tell you, on my Jeep in the wintertime, I had to put it in four-wheel drive, and a $7 piece of plastic broke, and it was locked in 3 low until I could literally climb under there with a $3 little tiny piece of plastic and pop it back onto a little thing and hook thing, and it was fixed like that.
Yeah.
But that thing crippled the entire machine. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about. Is asking the students what they find of value, and I just kind of the extension of that. We talk about student voice a lot, and that's kind of our platform. That's our soapbox. But by extension, it's also school districts have also got to look at teacher voice. Oh, teacher values.
You're right.
And
what are the values that the school is providing to the teachers so that they want to be there? Look at all the walkouts that have taken place recently.
Right now.
As a matter of fact, as we're recording this,
boiling over in Kentucky.
And that's it. It's the value of what the government / the school district, the whomever providing the value to those folks. And by the same token, as we talk about student voice, and so it may not be the right word.
No, I think it is.
But
if I don't value what I'm teaching, if I don't value what I'm teaching,
right?
If I don't find value in what I'm being told to teach to the test, yeah, I mean, really,
right?
If I don't find value in it, they're going to pick up on it,
sure,
and it's going to come across in my teaching that I don't find value in this, but I've got to show you how to do that.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say. By the air quote experts out there, value may not be the right word, but as far as we're concerned, value is the exact word to describe what the students need to feel and experience if you want to change what's happening in your school district.
We know, and it's funny. I know we keep thinking we're going to wrap up, but we don't. What's interesting about that is that we do conferences. We do conference coverage. And I can't stress enough, but it's funny. We see the same people. Not that it's a bad thing, but we see the same people at conference after conference. And those are the teachers that we see. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another issue, is that you can't expound on your values. You can't change your judgment. You can't grow if you're not, actually part of the process or living the experience of having new experiences,
right? So
that you know what's out there.
Yeah.
And I can't stress enough all these great conferences, from ISTE to FETSI. The Future of Education Technology Conference. Can't call it FETSI anymore. ISTE, the International Standards of Technology Conference. Yeah. The local conference, Hot Springs Technology Institute.
Sure.
TIAC, all of the ones that are out there. If you can't go to that at least once every 2 years, then when a person comes back to share, that doesn't always go as well. That person comes back to work and gets to work on their things. Everyone doesn't share like everyone else. And I think that's another part of value, is that a teacher feel valued. If you started going to your faculty and going, okay, when's the last time you went to a conference?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Some of our teachers haven't been to a conference in a decade.
Or ever.
But we send a lot of people to conference. Well, we're sending the same people to conference. Mm-hmm. And it's not their fault. Because, once you have steak, it's like, well, I'm going to try to have steak every time I can have steak, or chicken or whatever your favorite
meal is,
protein is, you have that protein, I'm having an icy every day. Forget diabetes. I'm going to have that icy. But, you can't blame those teachers for going to conferences, because they're the ones benefiting from it. They realize, okay, this is keeping me fresh. This is keeping me happening. And they find value in their job, and they feel valued. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's it. And I think that's where these students they get their ability to understand the idea of protesting and having a voice, is that they want to feel valued.
Sure.
And I can't take that away from them. I can say, wow, these kids are, everybody's, they're eating Tide Pods last week. Okay, whatever. Sure they were. You ran up $40,000 in credit card bills at the age of 52. Get over it. Everybody makes mistakes. Some of them are just bigger and stupider, and that just happens. But the kicker is that when you feel valued, then that's a big deal. And we always think, we forget that they're the kids that come to school. They're the ones that, when the Oklahoma governor decides to sign a $2 billion improvement to give whatever money they can give to teachers and people working in the education industry, that your numbers are up, that your kids, the people you're serving,
right.
Your McDonald's sign says 9 million served, or whatever, 9 billion served, or whatever it is. That's a big deal. And they're only going to stay that way if they feel valued in that whole system.
Exactly.
But anyway, I thought that was a interesting deal. But I tell you what, if you want to let David and I know how you feel about the way we feel, hit us up on Twitter, twitter.com/EduTechGuys, or you can just go out to your good old email and you can write either one of us, Jeff@EduTechGuys.com or David@EduTechGuys.com, or visit us on the web, www.edutechguys.com. Drop down to the bottom of the page and you can just fill out a nice form there and tell us to take our value and shove it. So, quoting old country song there.
Sort of.
Rewriting that song. Yeah. Or you can write "Kiss Our Grits." Either one. Kiss my grits. There's an old one. I don't know how many people are going to remember that one. Was that Alice?
Alice.
Yeah.
It was Flo. Flo on Alice.
Kiss my grits.
That's right. Mel's Diner.
That's right. Hey, listen, we just got back just a few weeks back from the East Con for the East Initiative.
Yes.
And we have a brand new East Initiative update with Spencer Watson and the crew. So let's drop out to that, and we'll be right back after this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Spencer Watson with the East Initiative, and this is the East Update. This week, we have a very special message marking a very special anniversary from our very own Matt Dozier, the President and CEO of the East Initiative. Without any further ado, here's Matt.
There are days that define us, Days that become not just a part of our story and history, but part of who we are. Some of those are easy to see or anticipate. The births and the deaths, the weddings, the graduations. Others sneak in on little cat feet like Carl Sandburg's fog, and we don't understand that they marked a turning point until after the fact. Sometimes far after. Saturday, April 7, 2018 marks the 20th anniversary of one of those unanticipated dates for me. April 7, 1998 was a Tuesday. That morning, I went to school just like I had for the past 8 years, or the past 24, depending upon how you look at it. Only I didn't go to my classroom. Instead, I piled into an SUV with 4 or 5 colleagues and we drove an hour to Greenbrier High School to see some new program, something to do with computers that had gotten one of my school board members all excited. Something called EAST. There, we met a teacher. He called himself the facilitator, named Tim or Jim or something like that, and one of his college professors named Terry. We sat in the counselor's office while Tim, or was it Jim, and Terry talked about how students could spend more time learning if we spent less time teaching. Sounded great. We'd all heard some version of this before. Then he did something different. He stayed behind and sent us across the hall to his classroom to spend time with his students, to ask them questions, to look at not only what they were doing, but how they were doing it. Oh, and he asked us to not get so distracted by the technology that we miss the students altogether. Wow! Less than 10 minutes later, my brain was on overload. There was so much going on. So many projects, so many students eager to talk to us and share their work. We left with what has since become a very familiar sensation. On fire to be a part of this EAST thing. The next 3 years were the most rewarding of my teaching career. EAST at North Pulaski High was described to me by one of my assistant superintendents as the most powerful learning environment he had ever been in, where you could feel the electricity in the air. Those kids, now adults, were the best team any educator could ask for. Meanwhile, that Tim guy, definitely not Jim, and Mr. Stevenson to most people, asked me and a small team to help figure out how he could teach other teachers to create an EAST environment in their schools. 1 minute he's a stranger, the next I'm talking to him every day. It came to a head on another April day that is unfortunately lost to the ages, when Mr. Stevenson called my principal and my wife, and he thanked them for giving me support to quit my job and come work for the EAST Initiative full-time. I really only wish that he had called me first and told me I was quitting. I started full-time at EAST the day after my birthday in June of 2001. I left 120 students to begin to help thousands every year. I started in communications and professional development, and really whatever else Tim needed done. By 2008, I was the president and CEO. I've traveled enough miles to get from here to the moon, but unfortunately not quite back yet for EAST. I've met 3 U.S. presidents. I've been to a gravesite so protected you have to get permission and then be chanted onto the land. I've met and worked with some of the most dedicated people you can imagine. Thousands of them have been our facilitators, who are the best educators in the world. Today, I help tens of thousands of students each year. I've wept tears of joy when those students have garnered recognition and acclaim, and scholarships, and jobs, and weddings. I've cried for other reasons too, particularly when I gave the eulogy for a very special alumnus who should have taken over the world, or at the very least taken over EAST one day. My family has been along for the ride, and they haven't always understood the craziness, but they've always been happy to pitch in. Both of my daughters were EAST students, and I expect my granddaughter will be as well. It's cliche to say, but 20 years is so long and so brief all at the same time. When I walked into that classroom in 1998, not many people believed in EAST. Today, most people in business, industry, and education know we're doing important work. Last month, East was named Nonprofit of the Year in our home state. In 1998, it was just a single classroom full of highly engaged students and one amazingly inspirational facilitator. There are so many people to thank for the past 20 years. Tim Stevenson changed everything about the course of my life on April 7, 1998. Today, my hope, my prayer, is that there are thousands of people who now realize, or soon will, that East is life-altering for the good. It is education accelerated by servicing technology. And it's also hundreds of thousands of people who won't give up when the problems seem larger than they are. Instead, they'll solve them, building the world we all want to live in. Let's finish like we started. I'm so grateful for the opportunities in the last 2 decades, but our work isn't done. Let me challenge you. Go find a local East classroom and sit down with one of our students. Ask them what they're doing. Do me a favor. Don't get so distracted by the technology that you miss seeing that student. If you can do that, then let's talk about how, working together, we can make sure that on August 7, 2038, East is something that all students everywhere can be a part of. Maybe we've only just met, and no one knows what your future holds. But from one old English teacher to you, I say, hop in the SUV. The ride is life-changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. If you're interested in seeing a video slideshow collecting hundreds of photos from the past 20 years, sharing the memories Matt's been talking about, look for that to be posted on the East Initiative social media feeds later this week. If you're interested in knowing more about the East Initiative, from information on student projects to the professional development services we offer to educators of all kinds, please visit www.eastinitiative.org or just search for East Initiative on social media. If you are interested in finding out how to get an East classroom for a school near you, please contact eastinfo@eaststaff.org. That's EASTINFO at EASTSTAFF.org. Special thanks to Matt Dozier. The music you've been hearing is called Beautiful Skies, a fitting reprise of a tune we've used before by Mary Craft of East at Crossett High School. Again, I'm Spencer Watson, and that's the East Update.
Hey, a big thank you to Spencer and the gang at the East Initiative. It's always great to hear the great things going on there, and they share some wonderful stuff with us, and they provide a great service to our kids. Hey, if you want to catch us on the web, www.edutechguys.com, or catch us on Twitter, twitter.com/edutechguys. Hey, for David Henderson, I'm Jeff Madlock. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to EduTechGuys Radio, radio.edutechguys.com.
The opinions expressed on the site and its programs are those of participants and not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any specific educational entity, sponsor, company, state, or government agency.